Welcome. I'm Mary Jo Feely, and I am so glad that you're joining me today, either live or perhaps you are catching this on replay, which is just fine as well. Our lives get busy, and I like to say that we can only be where our feet are. And so I'm just really grateful that you're able to tune in at all. I am just double checking that I've got things set up and I have activated the chat window for those of you who are watching live. If you have questions, feel free to go ahead and just enter them there, and I will periodically be checking the chat window to see if there are any questions that I can answer. Additionally, if you're new to this particular live stream broadcast, this live crystal Q&A that I offer every month, just know that any of the chats, they are not pushed out publicly. Once this video is ready to go, then that is deactivated. So it just guards a little of your privacy, which is important. So I'm Mary Jo Feely. I am the owner of Fourth Dimension Healing in Stillwater, Minnesota, in case you are new to my work. I'm also the director of the Center for Crystal and Healing Studies, which is my online school. And I started my online school when we first experienced COVID and everything paused. And through that school, I have created a number of courses. Some are free mini courses that you can explore to see where your interests might be. And I also have blended online learning courses, which means some of the coursework you're doing at your own pace. And then you and I are connecting virtually or in person for mentoring periodically throughout the course. And those vary from crystal healing and Reiki and energy healing. And there perhaps will be some more information later at the end of this podcast or this live stream as well. But I just wanted to let you know what I do. I also have a podcast called Ask, Learn, Heal, and all of the links to these different sources and places where I place my work can be accessed through my website, and also below this video you will be able to find the links as well. So I have been getting some great questions this month, and I have gathered the stones and brought them here to my home office, my home healing office. And I am going to just go right ahead and start. There were no residual questions from last month. And again, if you're new, you can always check back with my previous live crystal Q&As, and I put timestamps on all of the different topics that are covered so you can easily navigate through, which might be something that you're really looking for information about. And there is always, of course, the opportunity to just listen to the whole thing. So this first question, I think, just want to think which one. I want to start with this one, because this one comes up a fair amount, and it could very likely be because you are working with crystal healing. That's why you tuned in to this particular video. And it's perhaps a question that you've thought about from time to time yourself. You said, I hear you talk about putting gemstones on various parts of your body for healing. You also talk about putting stones in your pocket. Is it helpful to put a stone in my shoe to help with grounding? Is it necessary? You know, this is a great question, and it actually is a question that I do like to explore a little bit. So when we're thinking about crystal healing, we have to remember that we're working in partnership with the gemstone or crystal. We are not just asking the crystal to do some magic. It doesn't work that way. It's very much about having an intentional process of connecting with the energies and vibrations of the stone, as well as being really aware of what it is that you are recognizing as being kind of calling to you for healing. Now, this comes up actually sometimes when I'm working with clients during an energy and crystal healing session. Sometimes I'm actually drawn and guided during the session to take some stones, and actually it's like I wrap them around their foot. I have these cloths. Sometimes they are almost like a washcloth or a dishcloth, And sometimes I'm finding I'm actually placing a stone at the very, very bottom of the foot. Now, if we imagine that this is the bottom of the foot, right about here in your foot, right behind the ball of, right where the the joint is. But before you get to the ball of the foot is this little indentation. That's an energy center. That is essentially a chakra on the bottom of your foot. If you're feeling the sense of having a stone placed at the bottom of your foot, like sometimes I do with some of my clients, I'll actually take a stone. I'm just going to take a stone here. I'll put it here, right where that energy center is on the bottom of their foot. And then I will take a cloth, a small little dishcloth, and then I will just gently wrap. Let's have this be the dishcloth, wrapping it around during the session. And what that's doing is bringing that stone right up against that foot chakra. So that would be a time when, if you're sensing, should I be actually putting this in my shoe or should I be putting this in my sock? You might get the sense, yes. And then we have to realize, of course, we can't walk around with rocks in our shoes. That's not going to be helpful. It'll actually be hurtful toward the bottom of our foot. So how about this? How about taking a few minutes, putting your feet up, laying down to rest, perhaps meditating, putting your feet up on a cushion, on a stool. Maybe you have a recliner that you want to just rest back in, and either placing the stones like I do in my healing practice with a small piece of cloth, or taking your sock or your footie off and then placing that stone right up against that point. And you'll know it. You just feel around gently on the bottom of your foot and you'll find that soft little pocket right towards the very front part of your foot. Try that. Now, the other thing you may want to do if you're really getting a sense that, I feel like these rocks are supposed to be down by my feet, you could consider slipping them into the outside of a stocking so that they're perhaps maybe a little bit more at your ankle. That could work. It could be that you decide that you're going to, when you sleep, put the stones at the foot of the bed, maybe underneath your mattress or underneath the bed, so that that part of the stone is down in the area of your physical feet. Now, with all that said, you do not have to do it that way. The reason I'm encouraging you to think about that is if you start getting a sense, I feel like this stone should be near my feet, then these are some practical ways that you can approach that. So if we were to take this stone again, and let's say it's just really not practical to have it at our feet, you can slip it in your pocket, you can hold it in your hand, and you can set a very firm and intentional intention that this stone is supporting that lower part of your body. So it is about intention, and it is also from time to time taking the hints that your body, that your energy field, and then that inner part of you, your inner healer, think of it that way, is kind of inviting you to try something new. I have had clients tell me that they get a sense to put stones under their bed, at the foot of the bed, and that's a great way to do that. So go with what you're sensing feels right to you. And I would say never do anything that doesn't make sense to you or doesn't feel like it fits. All right. So I hope that kind of addresses that question. Remembering that when we are working on grounding, it means we are working on really connecting with the earth energies. Anytime we're working from about our hips on down, that is going to be the way to really support grounding really effectively. So placing those stones on or around your body from about waist or hip level down can be really helpful. I have a small little pouch that sometimes I will place my grounding stones in if I get a sense that I want to really stay present. I used to work, because I am a nurse, I used to actually work in school health, and I worked in elementary buildings for many years. And sometimes I just had a sense that it would be helpful for me to have my little pouch of stones with the process that I just described of intentionally setting that mindful reason why I'm working with those stones and bringing that into my day. And I would just slip it right, tie it to my belt loop, slip it through my belt. Sometimes I actually put the whole pouch in my pocket. And that helped me because, again, it was at about waist level and down. So that is an excellent question. And while it may seem kind of a little silly at first, it's actually not silly. Just remember, if you are sleeping with stones in footies or in socks, make sure you remember that so you do not stand up and step down on that, because I don't want you to have any kind of damage to your foot. Okay? Great question. This question is really timely. Let me check chat. Okay. This question is very timely because we really are moving into the holiday seasons, regardless of what tradition or what holidays you celebrate. Moving from fall into winter, we start kind of having a different sensibility around how we gather as friends and families. And so here's a question that I imagine some of you might be able to relate to. I'm expecting a lot of extended family during the holiday season. I know some of my relatives will question my gemstones and grids and ask about them. What do I say? So when I saw this question, the first thing I had a sense about is that we have to explain what brings us joy, what brings beauty into our lives. Just like imagine that you have just found a beautiful painting. You found it, you love it, you have it on your wall. You are now having extended family over to your home, and they're asking about the painting. And tell me about the painting. What does this mean to you? Why is this here? And you get a chance to express yourself. You get a chance to kind of take a look at that painting and notice how it is that it stirred your heart. What was it about the painting that drew you to bring it home with you? Think of it that way when it comes to gemstones and crystals. So if somebody were to visit your home, maybe you have lots of crystals and gemstones around your home, and maybe you're newer to this work. And so you're just getting used to having some of that around your home. Your home is yours. You get to enjoy what you enjoy. And one of the things I'd like to do very briefly is to create a grid and then show you how to look at that grid through the eyes of a beginner, as if nobody had ever seen it before. So I just gathered some stones, and I want you to notice that for this particular grid that I'm going to build, I don't have a template here on this table, okay? Some of my other videos and some of my other live crystal Q&As, we've actually built grids using templates. In fact, it was either last month or the month before we talked about grids, and we've been spending a fair amount of time over the last few months kind of coming back to crystal grids because it's a concept and a process that we grow into. So I'm intentionally not using a grid to help you if you are working with grids and are using grid templates, which I would say are very helpful to work with for a number of reasons. You can also create a grid without the template. So here we go. So what I'm going to do, and I have some orange calcite here. And I have 3 pieces of Tibetan quartz. Tibetan quartz is a particular kind of quartz that comes from the Tibetan area. And it has just this really, for me, a sense of a real spiritual nature compared to some of the quartz that I work with that comes from Arkansas or comes from some of the areas even where I live, because the quartz is very abundant. So I've got some orange calcite, I've got 3 Tibetan quartz, and then I have some small pieces of aquamarine. And what I'm going to do, and I'm breaking rules here, okay? If you've listened to some of my other videos, I talk about having a center stone. And also, I would say you don't need a center stone because the center focal point of the grid is there, whether we place a stone on it or not. So what I just did was took these 3, I'm going to move them down here so you can see a little better. Just made a little triangle with these 3 Tibetan quartz. And now I'm placing these 5 orange calcites in a pentagram shape, like a star. And then I'm going to take these 5 aquamarine and place them right between. I want to make sure you can see this, more or less. Let me pull that in just a little bit. There we go. So now we have a grid that has this kind of stormy center, and stormy references storm element, and you can see learn more about storm and all the elements in some of my other videos. But we've got a stormy center, then we've got a ring of fire, and then we have an outer ring of water. And so those energies are activating and they're soothing, and they're over the course of 24 hours left completely alone. The energies of this particular grid will all blend together and meld together and start functioning as one unit. You can activate the grid, and you can learn more about that in other videos to kind of jumpstart the process. I want you to look at this grid, because now imagine that you are visiting someone's home and you see this array, this beautiful arrangement of gemstones and crystals, and you can ask about it. So if you have an extended family member that comes up and says, "What is that?" and you go, "Isn't it beautiful?" And then invite them, take a look at it. What do you think about that? What does it make you think about? How do you feel when you look at that? This is what you can do. You can kind of engage the other person in the senses and how they're experiencing your grid, or it could be several pieces of stones that you have around your home, just like you would if you were showing them that beautiful painting that you brought into your home. So we don't have to explain what it is. If somebody's really interested, then you can. It's more about helping them have an experience of what they notice with that particular grid. Okay? So I'm hopeful that that answered the question for the person who answered it. I know who you are. I know who the folks are who submit these questions. So anybody can always reach back out to me if you have questions that you want to understand more clearly. But anyway, I hope that helped you. There's nothing mysterious. They're actually quite beautiful, and it's a very ancient healing modality. Let's keep that in mind, okay? So I will move these, and I just thought about something. Yes, I just wanted to make sure my tones were off. Don't want any disruptions. So if you're new to crystal healing, welcome. If you've been working with crystal healing for a while, I'd love to hear what you're noticing. How is it changing you? What are you experiencing in your life? All right. Check the chat. Here's a great question. I'm wondering if the energy from gemstones can help with the effects of seasonal allergies. For example, is there a stone that can support me in the midst of a seasonal allergy reaction of this type? So this brings up a couple points right away. One of which is that crystal healing, working with gemstones, is considered a complementary and alternative type of healthcare. It is not, if you're having an allergic reaction, if you're allergic to bees and you just got stung by a bee, if you're allergic to a food item and you were just exposed to that allergen, you need to reach out to your provider. If you have medication prescribed to prevent that allergic reaction from escalating, you need to do what you need to do. Remember that what I'm going to be talking about now when it comes to working with gemstones and crystals related to allergic reactions ties in a little bit differently than if you're having an acute allergic reaction. I hope I'm making myself clear on that. So when we think about seasonal allergies, when we think about, let's say we have allergies to molds or we have allergies to dust, and pretty much everybody this past summer experienced times when the air quality was really, really poor, that tends to trigger our body's response into kind of a reactive experience to some kind of a trigger. When I think about gemstones and crystals and how they can help support with allergies, particularly like seasonal allergies, I go back to the fact that it can help us reset our energy field, which means then our physical body functions more effectively. Our emotions are more balanced. Our thought processes are more balanced, and we feel better overall. It's not uncommon for us when we're having an allergic reaction. Let's say we have trouble with a lot of the spring season when all of the seeds are growing and the flowers are blooming. Then we can start maybe getting a little stressed. And then we start getting stressed, we get a little worked up. And so some of the stones I'm going to talk about are actually helpful for reestablishing some balance and some relaxation within the body so that the entire body functions better. So there are some stones that, and I've done some research too about this, that can be really helpful when it comes to working with seasonal allergies. And some of them we've talked about in other videos and other live Q&As. One of them is lepidolite. Now, lepidolite is a stone that resonates with the water element, and it is very effective in calming down the nervous system. So when I personally start having some experiences with more of a kind of a sustained allergic reaction, maybe it's the grasses that are growing and now I'm starting to itch and now I'm itching more and things are just a little bit more irritated within my body. Something like a lepidolite can help shift that emotional response and help me get back into a calm state. And there's, again, nothing magic about this. I don't hold the lepidolite for 5 minutes and then it resolves all the problems. But what it does is it helps us start shifting into a state of health and repair and reestablishing balance. So lepidolite is a good one to work with. Here's another piece of aquamarine. I showed you the other ones when we were building the grid just a little bit ago. Aquamarine, it's another water element stone. So water element stones are very helpful for supporting the calming and the soothing that we sometimes need in our energy field and in our physical body. So if you think about an allergic reaction, it's often going to be a runny nose, itchy eyes. It might be kind of breakout on the skin, almost like a rash or like an eczema, where things are really irritated and itchy. So again, if we can bring some cooling into our physical body at a really at a cellular level, as well as the energy field, it can be really helpful. So aquamarine would be one you could work with. And when I'm talking about working with crystals, and I have other videos in my YouTube channel that talk about that and how to work with crystals, it is about intentionally pausing, meditating, being quiet, reflecting upon what's coming up in your life, while you're working with a stone. And before I go too far, I want to make sure that you know that we just don't load our hands up with a bunch of crystals and gemstones and then start doing work, because we're not going to know what response to the gemstones can we attribute to which stone. So I would say in this case, if you're working, as the question is, seasonal allergies, definitely work with one stone at a time, and you'll get a sense of how did that impact you, and how did you notice a shift happen. Or maybe you didn't notice a shift happen with one stone, and then you work with another one and you noticed that it did. So that's an example. Carnelian is a powerhouse stone. That's all I can tell you about it. It is fire element. It is, to me, snap, crackle, pop. This is an activating stone. So if some of what you're working with when you're having a seasonal allergy is to kind of jumpstart your immune system to be able to really get that immune response moving the way it is intended to move so that it can resolve the allergens that you have and that response that your body has over responded to because of the allergens, carnelian with its activating energy can be really amazing. And I'd like to talk about carnelian also because we don't have to have super fancy stones. We don't have to spend a lot of money on stones to have a really powerful effect. Okay, so carnelian is a good one. Red jasper is another great stone to work with this kind of a I want to say chronic. It's not just an acute kind of, ooh, I just touched the poison ivy or the stinging nettle and now I have a reaction, but you could use some of that. But it's more about this allergic response, this irritation that is going on at a cellular level, and it often ties in with our stress response. It ties in with our immune system not being quite as solid and stabilized as possible. So when you're working with gemstones and crystals really related to this question, I want you to also pause and think, okay, what else in my life could I consider shifting? Maybe I need to get more sleep. Maybe I need to actually make choices related to food that are more aligned with what brings me health. Maybe I don't want to eat as many of those cookies because I never feel good when I eat too many cookies. So there are other ways also that we can bring an awareness to kind of the holistic overall lifestyle that we're living and see if there are other things as well that can be added into the equation. So red jasper is a very nurturing stone. It's also associated with that root chakra. Anytime we're working with the root chakra, that's the red behind me, that lowest energy center that drops off the tailbone, we are working with physical issues. So you can have migraine headaches. It's physical, which means you're still going to benefit by also working with some grounding earth kind of stones, because those energies that led to the migraine headache are actually, they slowed down enough that they're now locked into the physical body, which means we really are dealing with these lower chakras. In addition, perhaps, to some of those upper chakras where the actual symptoms are being experienced. So red jasper is a really great one. Here is a zircon. So zircon is a storm element stone. When I think storm, it's really transformational. It's really about activating all the chakras. It is about clearing out, very much like that fire energy clears out. It is about washing away, very much like the water element washes away. We don't have any stones that I pulled right now for this question that relate to wind. However, fluorite, which I don't have with me tonight, is also a stone that could be really helpful when it comes to allergies. So we've got all these elemental energies moving throughout our energy field and our physical body. And zircon is kind of like that stormy activating pathway, kind of really clearing out. So that's where zircon can become really helpful. And another one I don't also have with me this evening would be green aventurine. Aventurine is very often associated with earth element. It's also associated with water. So you can see that when we start bringing in specific stones that I've been naming, they are across the gamut of earth, fire, water, wind, and storm. So feel free to reach out to me if you have more questions related to this type of a situation. And it could be that I can give you some guidance. It may be that if you're having some ongoing issues related to allergies or something else, it might be that what you really would benefit from is a crystal healing session. Reach out to me and we can talk about that and see if that could be something that would benefit you to help you reestablish physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual balance so that you feel better and that you're not as caught up in the cycle when our immune system goes a little awry. And there's nothing wrong with this happening either, because our energy fields go in and out of balance a lot. And it's not uncommon at all for us to occasionally need to get better rest, need to go and get a chiropractic adjustment, maybe get an energy or crystal healing session, maybe go and see a therapist, maybe go and see our healthcare provider. So it's all okay. And crystal healing is one avenue through which you can move in your healing journey. Okay? So that is that. Here is another question. And again, while this may seem kind of silly, it is actually a question that I have dealt with myself. And perhaps, especially if you've been working with crystal healing for a while, maybe you have too. How do I truly keep a stone on the top of my head without it slipping off? That's a great question. And a follow-up is, and when should I do this? So one of the things that I did initially when I first started getting involved with crystal healing a number of years ago, quite a while now, I started actually, like when I would lay down, let's say for a rest or maybe to meditate, I would, first of all, I'd lay down, I'd kind of reach above me and figure out where was my head. Then I would sit up and I would place a stone there. And then I would figure out where is my root chakra, where are my knees, where are my thighs, and then I would place a stone there so that I had the bottom and the top laid out, and then I would lay down and I would place stones on me. And that works. Yes, it does. And there are times when things rock and roll and slide around, and we definitely want to be able to have stones placed where we want to place them. And if we want to sit up, how do we do that and keep the stone on the top of our head? So I have a small stone, and I intentionally brought this small little slippery stone. This is a piece of rutilated quartz. And I brought this because this is not an easy piece to keep on the top of a head. If we had a real flat piece, maybe we could put it there, not move, and hope it stayed there. But that kind of gets away from the point of being able to relax into the healing. So there are several ways to do this. One of which, if you don't want to lay down like I did and figure out where is my head and put it as close to my head as I could, sometimes I've taken a small little stocking cap. I live up in Minnesota, so half the year we're wearing caps on our heads because it's cold. And so I would put this on the very top of my head. Then I'd keep it there, and then I would put the hat on, holding it through the hat until it was placed where I wanted to, and then I would be able to sit and meditate. There are some other ways to work with it as well, and I'm going to show you a couple. Here, for example, if you have longer hair, this might seem familiar to you. And you'll notice that you could put it on your head and then slip it right over that stone and it would hold beautifully. Now, I know people who have short hair or no hair, so this would not work, right? So I have something else I wanted to show you you could work with. So this is a buff, okay? This is one of my buffs. And if you're not familiar with the buff, it's actually just a really long sleeve, right? And so what I would do with this buff is I would keep folding it and folding. I'm not going to fold it inside just for time's sake, but you're going to want to fold it to the point. In fact, I will for just a second show you what I'm talking about. And I could have had this ready ahead of time, but I wanted you to see how you can be really creative. And this just goes inside itself. It's long, it's designed for all kinds of different purposes, like if you're camping or keeping the bugs off. But what you can start doing, you can see you start folding it smaller and smaller, and you end up with a tube. It's almost like a little headband. And I'm sure your buff headband would look a lot better than mine. So you could do this and put this on the top of your head. And yet another thing I like working with a buff is, let's say you have, for example, a headache. It's not a migraine. We're not going to go into the big time migraine headaches, but let's say you're stressed, you're tense, you didn't eat very well, you're dehydrated, you realize that you've got to correct some of those physical imbalances, and you have a splitting headache as well. One of the things I've found is sometimes maybe taking a couple pieces of hematite, which is iron ore, sometimes taking some fluorite, which is a wind element that can be really clearing. Sometimes perhaps working with like a lapis lazuli, which is another wind element, or sodalite, and placing it on the parts of your head that hurt, and then stretching your buff and putting it around so that you can have it in those points around your head. So if you're having a frontal headache, you could use something like this or a stretchy headband to hold those stones in place. Then I would definitely say, then lay down, go into a dark space and allow yourself to rest. So that's kind of being creative with figuring out how we can keep a stone on the top of our head. If you have a lot of hair, you may want like a big, one of these big claws, because then you can kind of put your hair up and you can put your stone and then you can plop that on top. Anything you can do to help you not worry about that stone falling off, setting the intention that that stone is going to support the shifting of the energy that's happening within your brain space and within the energy centers, those chakras within your brow and your crown, that will help. And that would be my recommendation. Okay. So another question I have, this is a great question, and they're always really good questions. I would like to use a pendulum. How would I go about this? So a pendulum is simply anything that is weighted and held by a string or a chain. So if we think about the way homes used to be built with the bricks, and in order to make sure that those bricks were going straight, that house was being built straight, they would have what was called a plumb line, which was basically a piece of rope or string and cord, and it dropped down a weight, and that made a vertical line, and they could build that structure straight. So that's an example of what a pendulum is. Anything that's weighted, that's attached to a string. So when we're working with healing and we're working with crystals, it's not uncommon to want to work with a pendulum that is also made out of a crystal or a gemstone. Pendulums help give information related to what is going on in the subtle energy field. And the subtle energy field is the part of our physical body and our emotions and our thoughts and our spiritual nature that does not have physical density that we can measure by like touching. So I can look at you and go, are you okay? It looks like you might have a fever. I'm using my eyes and I'm looking at your physical body. With the pendulum, we're able to assess what's going on at an energetic level. And that can be really, really helpful if you are wanting to know which stone you would like to work with, or which foods you'd like to work with, or which type of energy practice you might like to explore for studying. So when we're working with pendulums, we learn how to get a yes or a no, and we are able to use it to discern answers. I brought some pendulums just to show you what pendulums look like that are crystal and gemstone pendulums. And working with pendulums is a very simple process, but it is not necessarily easy. So if you, like for example, this person, how would they go about using a pendulum? The first thing you'd want to do is learn how to work with a pendulum. And that is something that I certainly can work with you. For example, I'm thinking a mentoring session. It would be a great opportunity to spend time exploring how to work with a pendulum. Pendulums are introduced in some of my classes, but not necessarily all of them. And it's simply a way to gain information. So here is a aquamarine pendulum. And we can, I'm gonna just tell it what to do. I can override, if you're working with a pendulum, you can override your pendulum because we can assert our will, and we can have it respond in any way we want. So I'm going to ask it to make a big circle clockwise. And I'm really just, with my energy, is shifting this particular pendulum. Now, and you'll notice my hand is not moving. Now I'm going to ask it just go straight forward and back, forward and back. And now I'm going to ask it to go backwards, so that counterclockwise. So I'm overriding any energy that is subtly being expressed right now simply as a demonstration. When we're working with pendulums, we need to be totally neutral so that we can ask the question, which of these stones should I work with today? Which of these stones should I include as part of my crystal grid? There are all kinds of questions we can ask. And certainly working with crystal healing, if you were to take my crystal healing classes through my online school, you would be introduced into how to work with pendulums. You would even get a pendulum as part of the course, and you learn how to use it as you are exploring self-healing and healing for others. So this is aquamarine. Here is sodalite. So the aquamarine you just saw was water. Sodalite is wind. And again, if you want to work with a pendulum that really relates to the wind element, then you would be wanting to look at stones that resonate with the wind element that are created into the shape of a pendulum. Here is shungite. And shungite is very earthy, extremely earthy. It's carbon. And so some people find that they want to work with a crystal or gemstone pendulum, and they want to always have it remind them to be grounded and to be present. And so something like this could be really helpful. I have made pendulums out of a paper clip and a piece of thread. It works. It's a little tricky because neither the thread nor the paper clip weighs very much, but I've intentionally done that as a teaching tool to demystify pendulums. But working with gemstone pendulums is just amazing. I just wanted to show you what a pendulum is if you're not familiar with it. And if you are curious about it, reach out to me, let me know, and we can see how I might be able to help guide you with that. All right. I really am doing some serious thinking about creating a pendulum class through my online school, the Center for Crystal and Healing Studies. And so if I do that, and it keeps coming back to me, so I know it's kind of percolating inside. If that happens, I will definitely let everybody know about that. Okay? Good questions. So I love this question. I don't think I can get this question enough. I am confused. What is the difference between the different types of citrine? Brilliant question. It is confusing because when we hear citrine, we don't necessarily know the whole story. And so I want to tell you the story about citrine. And I have talked about this before. And so if you are really familiar, that's okay. So maybe something that I say will shed a new little ray of light for you. So I have a piece of amethyst here. Okay, so this is a point of amethyst. So this obviously came from a big hunk of amethyst. And when amethyst is unearthed, amethyst is one of the quartz family members. When it is unearthed, it's going to be purple. It might be a very, very deep purple. And if you have amethyst from Uruguay, you are going to have a very, very, very deep purple. It could be an almost lavender color. It will fade in sunlight. So it could be that somebody at one time had a dark piece of amethyst, but it's been sitting in the windowsill for 5 years. It may be quite a bit lighter simply from the ultraviolet light from the sun. So be mindful of that with this. It could also start a fire because it's quartz. So just be mindful of where you put your stones and learn about your stones. So when amethyst is unearthed, it's going to be purple. If it is heated up, it's going to become citrine. And it's going to become what is referred to as heat-treated or common citrine. And here is a smaller piece. I bet you can get a sense that this at some point would have been purple. And where we see these dark golds would have been the purples. And very much like this piece of amethyst has this white here, here's the white here. So heat-treated or common citrine is citrine that has been converted from amethyst, which is wind, to fire, all right? And it's been done artificially. Doesn't hurt the stone, but it changes its properties, okay? Now, if the same piece of amethyst gets heated up when it's still in the ground, so it's being heated up by the natural heat of the earth itself, not from being placed into an oven or a kiln, then what we get is natural citrine. Now, in my experience, this has a strong, steady kind of energy. This has a sharp and fast energy. So I work with both very often, depending on what the particular sense is. And this is where a pendulum would come in. Maybe I want to find out, let's just ask this question. I'm just going to ask it very neutrally so we can get an accurate answer. I'm going to bring these two citrines here. Here's the natural. In fact, here, maybe that will work better. All right. I'm going to set the intention that tomorrow I'm going to work with citrine. And I'm going to ask very neutrally which of these citrines would be most effective. All right. So you'll notice that this one was going back and forth. This natural citrine was making a clockwise rotation, when you work with pendulums, the first thing you do is learn how to discern what is your yes answer and what is your no answer. And for me, my no answer is straight back and forth. And for me, my yes answer is a clockwise circle. So I asked the question, which of these two would be most appropriate for me to work with tomorrow? And this is the one that my inner energy field is suggesting would be beneficial. Okay. So everybody's yes and no is going to be a little bit different. Maybe you and I would have exactly opposite yes and no answers when it comes to working with the pendulum. So that's one of the things I like to point out. And that's definitely when I work with folks who are learning how to work with a pendulum. We do it very definitively to get rock solid with it. What is a yes and what is a no? This also, I just wanted to show you, is another example of natural citrine. And I love that we get some of the matrix of the other stones that are also embedded within that space. So that is that question. I think that's a very good question. Another question came up here. What are the different types of crystal shapes and how do I decide which one I need? Great. We've talked some about this before, and I do have another video about working with the different shapes of crystals. So go ahead and take a look at that. Sometimes I will actually be able to, I don't know what side, I don't know which side it's going to show up at the top of the screen, but I will put a little link to my shapes video, my working with stone shapes. So I'm going to pull out some different stones that I gathered. Here is a piece of K2. K2 is a storm element stone. Beautiful. We haven't, I don't think, talked about K2 a lot. Here's a K2 pyramid. You can see just looking at the two without even knowing much about the stone, perhaps, I bet you can get a sense that there's a little difference in how the energy flows out of these stones. We've got this round kind of radiating out in all directions. We get this pyramid point up, very directional. So that could be one of the reasons why you might wonder which kind of shape should I work with? Which one do I need? Here is an example of rose quartz. Very, very nurturing. Probably one of the most compassionate stones, I would say, when it comes to self-nurturing. And I don't know about you, but we can kind of beat ourselves up sometimes. We can be a little bit rough on ourselves and we aren't able to let our guard down to see that more loving, compassionate part of us. And so when we're working with rose quartz, that can be really effective. You can see that with this tower shape, and this has been shaped by hand, nothing wrong with that. It helps pull those energies even more directly up compared to the K2, okay? That it here is in that pyramid shape. Then I wanted to bring this in for an example. Here's a piece of selenite. It's a selenite tower. So this is a very small selenite tower. Sometimes they're, oh gosh, sometimes they're really big. I like to have stones that I can manage and not hurt myself or hurt anybody else trying to move them. These types of small towers can be really helpful, especially when we're working with a stone like selenite that works way up in this upper chakra area. Not only the brow and the crown, which are associated with the wind element, which selenite is, it goes even higher up into those transpersonal or off-body chakras that are even higher than the crown chakra. So perhaps you're working with maybe exploring dreams. Maybe you're doing some dream work. And so you're wanting to connect with that part of you that isn't particularly grounded. Working with a piece of selenite in a tower form could be really helpful, maybe next to your bed. Heart-shaped stones, we've talked about those before, are wonderful representations of loving and compassion. So this is a piece of green moss agate, which is very, very grounding and nurturing. The color itself represents this green, compassionate, heart-centered energy that sometimes we find at that heart chakra. And then here is a piece of amber that's been shaped into a heart. So it's got that same heart compassionate energy, but an entirely different energy frequency because of the vibrational patterns coming from the amber, which is very, very gently grounding. And then I wanted to show you that we have, for example, here is a piece of pyrite. That's fool's gold. This is its natural shape. It's an isometric structure, unlike other stones that grow more hexagonally, like let's say perhaps it's going to look like a beehive, or it's going to look like the pentagram. And we talked about that last month when I actually brought my apple and I cut my apple sideways. So if you didn't get a chance to see last month's live Q&A, please go ahead and take a look at it. But when we look at this cube, right away, it gives us a better sense of what it's about compared to this sphere. So when it comes to the different shapes, there are just a lot of different shapes, and some of them are very natural, and you'll get a sense with what the shape is and the stone itself that's going to guide you as to how it can best support you. So I hope that gives you an idea of how you might decide which shape and which stone might be helpful for you. Okay? So we've talked about a lot of things. We talked about how we can work with stones in various parts of our body, whether it's the top of our head or the very bottom of our feet. We talked about how to live into the beauty of the crystals and gemstones that you may have in your home, and how to invite others to live into what their experience and what they notice about that. We talked about how can gemstones and crystals help with some of these common, like allergic responses and interferences within our immune system. And I hope that I was able to help support you with some of that. We touched on the pendulums. We touched on the different types of citrine. And they're all citrine. It's just how they get to that citrine property shift from amethyst into citrine. We get there in a couple different ways, okay? I wanted to make sure you know how to reach me. You can send me a chat through my website. You can go ahead and send me an email. You can text me. You can give me a call. I do encourage you to take a look at my podcast, Ask, Learn, Heal. I have a number of podcast episodes that are related to self-healing and energy healing and well-being and crystal healing, and they all include guided meditations, so that might be something you're interested in doing. Take a look at my online school. Maybe now is the time that you're beginning to want to move into taking your self-healing to another level and really deepen your experience with it. And I'm happy to be able to help you navigate that. I also wanted to let you know that coming up into the holiday season, and we've been talking a little bit about holidays, is that I am offering a sale through my online shop, and you can reach that again through my website. The link is below the video. I'm offering 15% off all of my in-stock gemstones and crystals, and that is going to be available. I wrote the dates down to make sure I did not misspeak. It is going to be available the day after Thanksgiving. So that is November 24th all the way through December 31st. I really do like to offer this nice 6-week period of time where you can explore gemstones and crystals, perhaps find some gifts for yourself or for somebody else, and be able to take advantage of some sales. So that is going to be taking place, and just keep checking back. On my website, there will be a code that you can use if you want to purchase online. And if you want to visit me in person, my shop will be actually open on Small Business Saturday, and that would be the 25th of November, and information on my website about that too. The final thing I want to make sure you know about is we're pausing our live Q&A next month. The holidays are a very busy time, and we get to focus on ourselves and our families and our friends and our loved ones. I would like you to mark your calendars for Thursday, January 18th from 6 to 7 p.m. Central. That is going to be when I will be offering our next live crystal Q&A. So get those questions ready. Go ahead and submit questions right through my website. Let me know how I can be of help. I hope you have found this helpful for you as you continue to deepen your understanding of and experience with gemstones and crystals for healing. For now, I simply wish you many blessings. Be well.